So now it's time.
Yes. Cheers.
So we start the
So we
16th
can start.
symposium.
Are you ready?
Yes. I'm going to put my things.
So now it's time. So I want to begin our discussion. This is the first time international discussion for a series of discussion titled Urbanism and Architecture after COVID-19. My name is Takayuki Suzuki, professor of Wuhan University in China. Wuhan is a place of
I want to see your face by video, Takayuki.
Yeah.
Can you switch on the video?
No, I can't. It's up to Esther. Oh, why?
We can't see.
Oh, okay. Now you can see. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm Suzuki, professor at Wuhan University. Wuhan is a place of origin of COVID-19, unfortunately, as you see. And today we are going to begin the discussion
Sinto não ouve, pois não?
for the architecture and urbanism, learning from modern movement. So this is a Docomomo conference. So we are expected to have knowledge and intelligence for urbanism and architecture. And as you see, now we are in home, or most of us are in home because all cities over the world are sealed off. And so I think architecture and urbanism are now faced on the crisis of the philosophy, I think. So so today I am a moderator and also one of the panelists. And I invited the Professor Yamana from Japan, Professor Muramatsu from Japan, and also Professor Ana Tostes from Portugal. So let's begin the discussion. First, I want to tell you a little about my opinion. I'm sorry. Okay. So this is a series of discussion, urbanism and architecture, and after COVID-19. And I think so. The title is "Modernism is Frozen" because our city and architecture is now frozen, sealed off. So we have not expected such a situation before. And today, the beginning of the series of the discussion, I named it "How do you map modernism and after COVID-19?" Because yeah, I will tell you why I named this title and how did I come up with discussion for this situation. So, for example, so modernism, so such kind of idea we had in the beginning of the modernism, neighborhood unit, Clarence Perry in 1929. And so all of us, architects and so who have studied architecture, have learned this idea. And our city, it's based on this kind of idea. So the community and neighborhood unit. But we know this idea had been expired a long time ago. But we had no idea for new community. But this time, in the crisis of the COVID-19, we are now in home. All of us are now in home, and we know, we have noticed that we have no community around our house. So it's a very big problem. And in history, we had disease, a lot of disease, so plague, HIV, Spanish fever, or Spanish flu, or COVID-19, and route of contagion are different, and the reaction are different. So plague, it's one of the reasons to develop and plan the new city, a modern city, because it's a big matter, big issue of sanitation. So we needed to clean up our city and build sanitary city when the plague occurred. But this time, COVID-19, it happened in the modern city. So our city, yeah, some of them are not so clean, but most of us, and in China, even in China, cities are sanitary, enough sanitary. So we need to find a new idea to avoid such kind of contagion, and also new city, new community. And historically, in history, so plague, HIV, COVID-19 we had, and as I said, so modernism happened in the beginning, in the end of 19th century, and Siam, Le Corbusier appeared in the beginning of 20th century, and mostly in 20th century, we have built our city to aggregate the lot of population, and we built a very high density sanitary city there. And I think, but this time it's very different from the situation after a plague or HIV, because this COVID-19 just 2 meters distance, we might be contagious. So so I think we need to think again. We need to consider again the diagram of the city and architecture, and also it means we need to think about, for example, community. And I think this is our mission, because we are architect, we are historian, and all of us are architect and historian who want to learn from modernism. And I think the modernism that is essential power to involve progress our age, progress our philosophy, progress our society. It's very important, still important. So I think we need to learn from modern movement to think about such kind of progress, and how to build, how to design our world with changing society. So I thought I got my own idea here. So before COVID-19, house and foreign countries are very separated. It's a long distance. So neighbor is very near, and elementary school, supermarket, high school, such kind of neighborhood, community, town, city, national border. It's our spatial skill diagram before COVID-19 in modern city, modern movement. And the lowest one under COVID-19 now, we are in each house, each home. And in home, we need to work, we need to study, we need to enjoy. Everything is in our house. So after COVID-19, what we should do? And I think, so now our space must have personal space and also public space in one space. Sometimes, of course, we need to go into another world, another country, another city. But sometimes we need to build up, we need to stay in instant stay home city. And this is the final slide that I will show. I draw it as with the title "Instant Stay Home City" with rooftop balconies neighborhood unit. So I think it's very clear. So now we need to stay home, and we, as I said first, we have lost our community, like a neighborhood unit that has a center in the city, as a church or elementary school, but we have lost such kind of community. So now I think, as we see in the news or newspaper, balcony is one of the very good community space. So sometimes, and we have IT technology, we have Uber Eats technology, we have internet, so we can enjoy our stay like this. So this is one of my idea. So the point is, my point is, as a moderator and as one of the panelists, we need to learn from the philosophy of modernism, modern movement, and we need to find something to teach us, something what we can learn, and we need to transform it according to our crisis, our life, and after COVID-19. So I want to discuss with you about what we can learn from modernism, and today's thing, how we can map modern movement in the history or in our world. It's a it's a question I want to ask for all panelists. Thank you. That is my presentation. So now I want Mr. Yamana to present your idea. Oh, I'm sorry.
I cannot.
Sorry.
Can you see the image?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much for the Professor Suzuki. So you stay in Tokyo now. So you give a lecture in the Wuhan University through the internet.
Yes, that's right.
So now, so today I want to give a presentation, a new departure, new social distance and the monumentalization of the modern movement. Can modern movement architecture survive as a living heritage? So I give two photos. That one is a ferry boat in this February in Yokohama. There's many passengers got coronavirus, and from these days, in Japan also is infected. And the right one is Marseille to Athens, the 1933. That's for the Siam 5th. So today, for the Professor Suzuki, he gives for the 5-minute presentation, but maybe I need much more time. So the first question he asked to me is what coronavirus COVID-19 has brought to our city and architecture. So I answered the opportunity to think for a new way of the life that requires a people's physical distance, and to recognize a new social distance for the space, time, and architecture. So this photo, the center one is the Widodo-san and Professor Aoki-san, and also the Yugo Segawa. From the Singapore and Istanbul and Sao Paulo. So we discuss and like this for the lecture for the Technical University for the Istanbul. So today's under the COVID-19 opportunity to discuss increase on the internet. So social distance with a virtual friend has been reduced, but just discussing on the internet, it doesn't really feel like meeting and talking. Even enough, we could easily exchange opinion, information, or knowledge. So under the new condition of the COVID-19, we could change the perception of the space, time, and architecture. So the CM4, the Athens, that is a theme is the functional city. The head in 1933. It's a boat of the parties second. The Marseille is from Marseille to Athens. At this moment, they write it out for the charter of Athens, Athens Charter. So that is one of, we believed, the modern movement of architect and person that believe this charter and to develop this idea and urbanism. So the Le Corbusier is the right side, the photograph is one of the famous urbanism project by the Le Corbusier. So this model of the city is the high density, and all the person go to the center of the town and to work. But in Tokyo also, and many Chinese city and Asian city, and also in Europe, that model of the city is everywhere in the world now. So, but this condition we cannot follow now. And also the Docomomo, we know that kind of urbanism project. And then we set up the Docomomo International to consult for the protection as a cultural heritage. So now my presentation is focused in the Docomomo's how we have to go after. So the fact is the fact we learn from the modern movement. One thinks we can learn from the modernism is how to discuss ideal and universal architecture and city in an international framework. So nowadays also the Docomomo today also we discuss in the international framework. So there's many persons participate in this discussion. And from this moment, we can discuss internationally for the architecture and city. It's the universal idea called modern movement was understood internationally through the text, image, and architecture. They were enthusiastically believed until at least 1950s, or even after that. People's sympathy for the modern movement continued. Under the new condition of the COVID-19, has a modern movement stopped in 2019 or not? That is a question. And under the new condition of the COVID-19, what is the growth of a new tradition today? So for being aware of the architecture inheritance, first recognize the changing the paradigm, the surrounding architecture and cities. Second, aware of the end of the modern movement for urban and architectural development by the industrial society since the 18th or 19th centuries. Third, remember the recent destruction of the modern movement architecture and consider where is the correspond to the vandalism for the cultural heritage or not. The fourth, understand where is a community that shares the value of the modern movement architecture as a cultural heritage. And that's the last, fifth one, identify a multi-tiered community and stakeholders from the local to the international who shares the value of the cultural heritage. So to view the modern movement as a cultural phenomenon of the semi-past that has a gap or distance for the present. Based on the premise, write out and share of the value of the modern movement architecture as a cultural heritage. And in order to examine the local value to the international value to a multi-layered way in the historical time axis, the discussion on the network of the Docomomo internet becomes very important. So as a virtual experience on the internet increase, it will become more relative by this with an understanding in the experience. I hope that a real architecture space experience will become more and more important for the discussion of that kind of things. So thank you very much. That is 5 minutes, I hope. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Professor Yamada. Okay, so we'll move to the presentation by Professor Muramatsu. Muramatsu-san, can you please present your presentation?
Hi, good morning or good afternoon. I will. Okay, my name is Shimura Matsu, architecture historian in Japan. And in 2001, I founded an organization called MAN, Modern Asian Architecture Network, with Dr. Johannes Widodo here. He is now in this Zoom conference. He is from Singapore Singapore University. This MAN organization has been critical of Docomomo's Eurocentrism. However, since the beginning of MAN has also been collaborating with Docomomo. Currently, I have been coordinating the National Academic Committee members for the Docomomo International Conference in 2021. My report today comes as an architectural historian in the spirit of the both MAN and the Docomomo, like as Janus I put in the first page. Today, Dr. Suzuki gave us the question, how do you map modernism under / after COVID-19? And my answer to this question, in short, is inherit wisely modern built environment as Janus. This hospital in the cover page is constructed in the end of 1920s in the northern Amazon, Brazil, by famous Detroit architects in the United States, Albert Kahn. The Ford automobile company, very famous company in the United States, tried to construct a new town named Fordlandia in order to produce rubber for automobile. Not only factories, but housing and schools, pools and hospitals were built for the workers. But rubber trees were not successfully grew up also, and also tropical disease damaged the Utopia town, which had pulled out of the tropical forest. Last year, a huge area of Amazon was burned because of the production of coconut oil. Some scientists say that the depletion of forest resources is one of the reasons for the spread of COVID-19 virus. I mean, we built cars, cities, and hospitals for our comfort, but the fact is that it was actually the cause of the corona disaster. The act of construction always has both positive and negative aspects to it. This utopia town that the Ford were trying to create is the two sides of the Janus that modernity has, a symbolic event. This coronavirus epidemic, American rich people could enjoy in the concrete modern condo, but Indian workers killed by the train going back to their hometown because of unemployment due to the spread of coronavirus. This railways is one of the World Heritage in India, which is a symbol of industrial revolution. This fact also tells us the result of modern construction will serve human but kill people like us, Janus. The Industrial Revolution was the cause of human activities, significant impact on the global environment, and we call the period after that the Anthropocene. The various structures that came into being in this Anthropocene period provided a wonderful world for man. At the same time, it was a disaster for the global environment and certain people. It can be said that the modern buildings had both sides of Jan's face. And now let's move on the conclusion. This Zoom discussion asked how the Docomomo should be changed by this coronavirus outbreak. As you know, Docomomo is an abbreviation of the documentation and conservation of modern movements, as Dr. Yamana introduced at the previous lecture. I've known about this Docomomo organization for about 20 years, and I still don't understand why it only covers the modern movement. Another question is, why do modern buildings have two sides to them, but only a positive assessment? I have three responses. The first is to extend the subject from the modern movement to all the buildings that have been built in Anthropocene. The second is to evaluate how the building has affected society before documenting and conserving it. Third, the goal of these activities is to create a sustainable global future rather than a self-fulfilling pleasures of modern movement manias. My suggestion is to change the name Docomomo to Eva Doco MBE for GSF after COVID-19. But if you give the new definition of the Momo, capital M Momo, change to the small Momo, we can call it Eva Docomomo for GSF after COVID-19. This is my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Muramatsu. Thank you very much. So we are now going to move one more presentation by Professor Anna. So Anna, can you present your opinion, please? I can't hear you, Anna.
Of course.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, so I wish to put my presentation. Okay, so we start. Can you see now?
Yes.
Can you see now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Perfect. So I wish to be very, very brief, I hope, with this kind of reflection.
Yeah, we can see your presentation.
On this, sorry, can you see?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. And so I think, and we all are going through really unprecedented times and situation, and perhaps the most astonishing thing is that we, I mean, a kind of civilization situation, thought that our world in his imperfection, was perfect. I mean, imperfection with all the difference between people, poverty, all the societal problems. But anyway, I would say that in Western terms, this kind of Western-centric behavior, we never thought that we could face what we are seeing here. So this is the World Economic Forum schema that all of us know by newspapers and so on. So our life changed a lot. And in fact, and this is a very, very interesting thing brought by with this image of Niemeyer, that so far the best vaccine to prevent contamination was being made by architects. And we should think that modern movement architecture, what we discuss and we work on Docomomo, has to do with a constant and permanent updating with the world. For instance, now in our city, we are working in this process of transforming Lisbon in a completely system of green lines and just for bikes, for instance. And this is a modern movement. We know, for instance, and this was shown, we will see our journal, how this kind of toxic topography is around the world. This is Chile, Santiago, no? And shall we live like this, staying in our home in this kind of domestic isolation? Shall we continue to produce all these computer rubbish things? And we must not forget that the story of mankind is made by plagues. Professor Suzuki told us this is cholera around the world. This is leprosy, for instance. In our country, it was really recent. So we used to work and live with all these terrible catastrophes. And this is the story of mankind. And of course, Docomomo, very, very, very acute and always in time. Yeah, I hope you have all received the last journal on current care. So there's no organization in the world that could be, you know, so in time with the journal. And with fantastic collaborations. I must thank Hubert Jan here. He's one of our editor board group, and we call past things to discuss the future. So this is a very, very interesting combination with a recent New York article, When Parks Were Radical, and this is the work of Olmsted that we published. But I think the most significant point is that modern movement architecture, in a way, was born or emerged as a medium for healthy. And Zonnerstal Sanatorium is one of our icons because of this as well. But these clients of modern architecture were showing lots of transformations, and this is a quite, let's say, funny thing, the Villa Savoie with the washing hands basin in the middle of the living room, and of course other solutions. And during, for instance, the 50s, the research made on medical spaces was incredible. This is just an idea about architectural record discussion. So to really keep the 5 minutes and the discussion, I would like to end saying that perhaps we could think, and we could think as Docomomo, of course, in 5 themes for coronavirus update. And I'm using expressly this A, did, B place as a kind of untouchable space, a kind of, you know, space of the future where we don't touch anything, we just, you know, flow in the thing. And what I would like to put in our discussion is, first of all, this virus as stress our survival instincts, like always. But these survival instincts, I think they could mix with a strong feeling of solidarity. Otherwise, we can't survive. And reassess values. And reassess values means as well rethinking society, and something very crude and terrible that coronavirus shows or showed or is showing to us. It's the difference between poor and rich, between rich countries, poor countries, you know. All the belts, the poor belts of the city are in terrible situation. Not if we don't know as far as is this situation, but it's a terrible situation. And you know that modern movement was pushed by questions like this to urbanism. So this is a chance to reset what we call in global terms sustainability, and the unique way to approach life, world, architecture, urbanism, which is sustainability. And sustainability has to do with heritage, with economy, with urbanism, with all aspects in our life. And it's absolutely important to balance, of course, climate change questions and global heating. This is a question. And Shin talk about this, all the damage that we provoke to the planet, and these virus and the other catastrophes that are going to come have to do with this. So in a way, it's important to reset. It's very good that we have this digital escalation, that we can be together, for instance, this morning or this afternoon or this evening all around the world. This is absolutely fantastic. But the point is that we must use this chance to call innovation. And I ask you to don't forget the last sentence, the last point of the Docomomo Constitution, which is to think about new solutions and innovation for the future based on the open concepts of modern movement, discussion, reflection, and all the richness that we attain till here, with the bad face of Janus and the good face of Janus, as Shin expressed to us. So don't forget to read our journal on cure and care, where some lights have to do with this unprecedented situation we are going through. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. So now we had the oral presentation by the panelists, and all of you mentioned about environment or sustainability. Of course, it's one of the biggest issue for our age, and so it's we agree. So it's a sustainability environment. It's the one of the biggest problem for us, and now we need to change the idea for architecture and the city. Of course, we can agree. So, the point that we should discuss is what we can learn from the modern movement, and what the idea in the modern movement has been expired. And I think I'm not an optimist. I'm a pessimist. So sometimes I think it's pretty difficult for us to teach architecture for young generation, because the next 10 years, next 20 years, maybe city would be changed so much. And as Anna says, digital escalation would be more escalated. And on the other hand, of course, we need a new solution for the new age, so a spatial idea. But we need to discuss here now. So what we can learn from modern movement, and we need to say, well, this idea has been expired. So we need to find new idea instead of the idea that modern architects presented 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And I think if we Docomomo have not assessed the some of important architecture, we should now assess and learn from such kind of architecture. So this is a point I want to know, I want to discuss with you. So first, I want to hear again all of the panelists, your opinion about everything that the other panelists pointed out. So Professor Yamana, what do you think? So you said you mentioned about the heritage, and so some of the modern movement has changed into heritage, and it means cultural heritage, and it's almost same. It sounds almost same as old church or also old regional architecture. Or so. What do you think about the with the word heritage? What do you think about what we can sustain from modern movement, and what we need to change? What's the idea we need to change? What do you think, Professor Yamana?
Maybe I understand your question, or I try to answer. So just I mentioned for the cultural heritage for the modern movement, I said that because of the coronavirus, it's a paradigm is changed. So the modern movement around the 1930s, it's no more. It's not function now. Maybe one side is already the Professor Muramatsu mentioned. There are two sides. That some of them we can work on that, but some of them we cannot, because just the society already changed, and many things is changed. So we have to aware for the modern movement as cultural heritage. We have to have some distance for that. So the coronavirus, the changement gives us the new condition. So Docomomo also aware for that. I think that is answer my.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
I understand.
Okay, so Professor Yamada, so yeah, now some of them are out of use, lost function, and but of course we know so some of architecture in the early modern it shows us the philosophy or idea for the new era in that age. So,
And also, I already said the modern movement, this tendency from the 1920s gives us the chance to discuss internationally. So we can compare it with the same value, but at the same time, the reception of the each area, each region is not the same international modern movement. So maybe in Tokyo or in Japan or Singapore or Europe, it's not the same modern movement that we can understand. But before the modern movement, the architecture exists, and then after the modern movement, we can easy to discuss the international. That is my point. Thank you.
okay, okay. Professor Muramatsu, do you have any opinion for the comment by Yamana or any opinion?
Yeah, thank you. Before I will give my opinion, I want to correct my presentation. The railway where the 19 Indian people killed was not a World Heritage, but now Indian experts want make the railways be a heritage, a kind of heritage. So the Mori from India corrected me now at this moment. And the opinion is the Anna, Professor Anna, I understand Professor Anna agreed to change the Docomomo's name to what I mentioned, maybe.
No.
No. Anyway, for me, modern movement, that's the Yamana mentioned, or the Professor Anna mentioned, is a very, very narrow and small definition. For me, not capital M, but after the mankind human started appeared, we have many huge different modern movement in the different world, in Japan, in China, in Portugal, in the United States. So, but after the Industrial Revolution, the movement are a little bit different from the before the Industrial Revolution. It's too big impact to the global environment. So I want to expand the definition of modern movement to the by this Anthropocene I mentioned. It is
Okay, so
again.
So, what is it's your idea? So, what is the modernism, or what is the modern movement for you? Can you describe?
Modern movement is the capital MM is the just Docomomo people's definition.
Okay.
But my definition, small mm is started from the mankind appeared maybe 30,000 years ago. We started very different small mm modern movement. So this is answer to your question.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I want to.
Professor Henket, yeah, he wants to speak.
Oh.
May I interrupt?
Sure, of course, please.
Thank you. First of all, I thought they were very interesting lectures you all gave. That's number one. Two, as far as Docomomo is concerned, the original idea of the modern movement when we founded it is a very simple definition, and I'll just read it to you. The idea of the modern movement is to implement innovations made in the sciences and technology in order to create a better social, environmental, and cultural world for all. This has been translated in a variety of different ways depending on local and political circumstances. That is basically the definition we've used up to now for the modern movement. Yamana pointed out very clearly that an enormous amount of changes have been made and have happened in the world. And I agree with that, because one of the main things of that idea of the modern movement is that change, it's a dynamic society everywhere, so the conditions are changing. But the philosophy, the idea that you just use the innovations of science and technology to improve the world, a better life for all, etc., that is basically what we understand to be the modern movement. And you know, the idea started in the Industrial Revolution and the Enlightenment in Europe, but that doesn't mean that it's Eurocentric any longer. Thank God it's not Eurocentric any longer. And I think because we have Docomomo, and you know, you've pointed it out as well, and Anna has done that as well, it makes it clear that we have a global community thinking about this idea of implementing the innovations of science and technology. So it's a perfect platform for people to discuss. That's my introduction.
Okay, thank you. I have some opinion, but I want to hear first from Anna. Anna, what do you think about this discussion, including the opinion by Henket? Can I hear your opinion, Anna?
Thank you. I think this is something like beyond an opinion. It's a kind of a conceptual statement. We think that modern movement, and for me it's very clear, following what have been said, and Hubertian of course, it's that for let's say a very innovative process following all the modernization of the world since the 18th century, the modern movement, it's perhaps the the unique movement, or the first movement in art, architecture, and urbanism, dealing with the change and feeling this idea of space-time always changing, and this social and economic and political dynamic, it's part of the movement. And so the awareness to create this, let's say, utopia of a better world has to do with an acute feeling and the need to answer to social problems, to ecological problems or environmental problems. Of course, architecture is not politics, but could be, and politics matter, and architecture matter. And perhaps what happened, and I'm saying that in my view, modernity, it's a process in construction, is a working in progress thing, and we should discuss in order to improve it, to update. And we are going through now a strong revolution because of all the digital transformations, and now with this kind of big crisis with this global virus. It's not the first global virus, but perhaps it's the more speedy worldwide virus. And of course, we are dealing now with information in short span that we didn't had 100 years ago with the Spanish influenza. It was different. But so my vision of modern movement, it's not the narrow thing that Professor Muramatsu told. It's a completely open and global concept, trying to reach not a worldwide solution, but different local solutions. This is the thing, and it's not at all a narrow thing, because in Docomomo we are dealing in a way with heritage, which is something connected with what is the legacy. And we really do believe that the legacy is part of the future. But we are approaching science and all the transformations. So we are a very, very peculiar group, and I think that's the reason why we are very, very alive for more than now 30 years, and we were able in this very, very moment to discuss the questions of cure and care. Before COVID, we start, of course, the journal before the pandemic situation, but we were working through the thing. So I think we are really, really very much shopping in the time. With this idea, I'm very much fan of Jürgen Habermas' concept of this continuity of modernity, always changing, always changing. It's not just the 30s or the 40s of the 50s. It's a construction of a thing with this importance of three main lines, which is ideology, has to do with politics, of course, techniques, and spaces. These three lines. For me, it's the modern movement, great achievement.
Okay, thank you. So as Professor Muramatsu says, it depends on the definition of modernism. But on the other hand, so for us and for the next generation, what is useful and what is not useful, it's our biggest issue. And as Henke said, of course, architecture modern movement in architecture and modern movement, it's always seeking for the improvement and new technology, as Anna says. So it's a kind of endless trip, or so we of course we in next 10 years, next 100 years, we will improve our technology, and we will find a new solution for our disease or environment or our politics. So, yeah, we can do it maybe. But on the other hand, for architecture, I'm not sure what we can do for the society, because now we are discussing with the Zoom meeting room, and I'm teaching a Chinese student from Japan, and so for the technology, about the technology, digital technology is now improving more and more. But on the other hand, technology in the modern architecture, if it's useful or not, I don't know. I cannot say, because now I can live without the physical space. Of course, I need it, but so as Yamana says, so maybe some of architecture in modern movement might be it's a kind of, it's not our attitude. So if we just love modern architecture in the modern movement, we are a kind of a fan of a dinosaur. So I think still in this digital age, so when we can talk with a Zoom meeting or online communication, Uber Eats, we can eat by Uber Eats, and so such kind of age, what we can do, what we can learn from modern architecture, it's my primitive question. And now I have we have Peter Cook in the guest. Peter Cook, maybe you are in London, or maybe so. Peter, can you join us to mention about this discussion?
Oh, can you see me?
Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, well, I think I'm not a member of Docomomo. I was a child of the modern movement, in the sense that at the age of 14, I was reading books about modernism, and then went to a very small school first, which was teaching a kind of 19th century École des Beaux-Arts curriculum. So this was rather odd. I was a modernist before I was an architecture student, and then went to the area where it changed again. I think that historically, there's always a change of, a dramatic change of organization or form after disaster. If I speak locally, you know, in the Great Plague, there was then after that, the spacing of buildings differently. After the Great Fire of London, the same. And then I take a naughty example, because there's also the modernism, in the sense, came on the back of a general liberalization or distaste with the terrible conditions in which people were living. And I like to give the example of the work of de Klerk in Amsterdam, who is not what some of you would think of as a modernist, because stylistically he was not a modernist, but he was able to do what he did on the back of the analysis of the Amsterdam slums, and his buildings replace that. So that I think that, in my mind, there is a problem of Docomomo or modernism, which it is associated with a mannerism, though the principles really were building up. And I will give another incredibly local example, meaning where I live myself and where I'm looking now. If I turn the screen, you can see that there's a lot of vegetation. Yeah, I'm lucky enough to live in a bourgeois inner suburb of London, which was planned on probably the principles of Park and Unwin, and was around the time of Bedford Park and the other areas which were lucky enough, bourgeois sort of town planning spacing, to have large amounts of garden, good ventilation between buildings, a lot of balconies. This is 100 years ago or more, before modernism, or just before modernism. And I think a lot of the notions of good living were available to the bourgeoisie in that tradition. And so I don't see modernism as beginning and ending. And I very much like the view that was reminded by Dr. Hankett and Professor Anna, which was that modernism is about innovation. And I would track it backwards and say that innovation also comes out of improvisation. And surely one of the things that we have learned in the last 3 months is that a lot of what we do has to be improvised, has to be trying to create a situation out of something which physically is not the ideal situation. It does affect the way in which we articulate ourselves. I find myself that constantly sitting in front of a Zoom screen, I have to be more dramatic, I have to be more simple, you have to look into my eyes. We can't indulge in nuance. And yet, interestingly, certainly in the circles I've moved, the word nuance was being increasingly used over the last years. Nuance in terms of political information, nuance in terms of implicit values in addition to explicit values. Nuance in terms of architecture, it's a very tricky one because it means not necessarily taking broad brush typologies. And I think one of the criticisms of high modernism, and indeed an extreme criticism of the kind of ninth-rate derivation of modernism that is applied to high rises in large cities, is that it's dependent upon a few rules based on broad brush analyses. And then the rule says, this is what you do for a 3-person family. This is the amount of space that you give them. This is where they're watching the TV set. And oh my God, now half of them are actually sitting at laptops. What do we do about that? Now, one of the things that I think that also this situation has generated is that a large number of people are trying to do things on a laptop. They're trying to cover the whole range of their activities. And so in the process of putting up a building at the moment, I have one guy driving in a car because he doesn't trust the public transport health situation, to a site where he will sit so many meters away from 3 or 4 guys, but they are still building the building. And rather than me, at the age of 83, risking life and limb, going down to the site as well, I have to do more and more and more and more on the laptop. So but then the question is are we trying to still use the same apparatus but improvising? I think nuance is linked to something else which I have noticed very much in the last 3 months. I take more notice of trivial objects. I don't go into the whole city. We walk around the district and slowly edge out with masks. But you notice little things. You say, that cat is sitting on the wall. Did you realize that house has an interesting tree? Something which I've always noticed in Japan, actually in Tokyo, which is that it appears to be chaotic, but actually it's full of small, nuanced objects. Now, modernism, clear that aside, it said this was trivia, this was dirty. It didn't matter if you gave the base. I think that what we do see is the relation, and balconies were mentioned, the relation between the balcony, the end of the balcony, what you see from the balcony, and the village. It is possible that over time, the notion of the completely sort of conglomerate large city will have to be interfered with. It ought to have been anyhow. I think there's certain things were brewing but needed in a horrible way the virus to draw our attention to it. People do want to, many people wanted to work at home anyhow. Many people wanted to identify with things in the community anyhow. Many people wanted degrees of privacy which could then be contrasted with degrees of non-privacy anyhow. I think some of these things were in the air anyhow. I have done also what Taka Suzuki has done, which is I have made a drawing amongst several other drawings. Can you see this? Can you see this?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'll make it a bit larger. So this is just a drawing I did last week, which is saying, not only do we want to work from home, many of us, anyhow, but why limit it to what you can do on the laptop? There's an old tradition, which of course in some ways modernist urban design dismissed, which was the tradition of backyard industry, what we would call backyard industry, small artisan operations happening cheek by jowl with living places. Now, you can say that the Chinese shop house has something of that condition where, you know, you maybe make something, you live there, you sell it, you don't, whatever. You have this ubiquitous sort of box in which it can all happen. I think that could, and you will notice the detail of this drawing. It's really a sort of symbolic drawing rather than anything else. It is suggesting that market gardening, not just somebody growing a few tomatoes in a pot, but actually quite serious market gardening and the keeping of chickens and so on, so that you could be having eggs and apples and other such potatoes maybe grown here, but that you also use the full surface of the building. That in a sense is probably a modernist heritage thing, that you not only make balconies, but large balconies, and you use the roof. In London, we have, if you look at the skyline, and Paris as well in places, you look at the roofs and they're just thrown away with a few sort of bits of lift overruns and air conditioning. The other implicit part of the drawing is to say that perhaps you allow the individuals to make the enclosure. I was very amused, maybe you guys wouldn't be, but I was amused when I first went to one of the Siedlungen in Frankfurt many years ago, before I got to know them better, where the people living in them had taken away the doors and some of the windows and had put coaching lamps and things that we would regard as rather naive, sort of peasant-like things. But they were enjoyed, but the organization of the Siedlungen was still there. And then, of course, I remind myself, and then I'll finish, locally, that Ernst May, after all, worked for Parker and Unwin. And so I come to the full loop, that the sort of thing that I'm looking out on now is linked to what I later observed in a more strict, more developed way in the Siedlungen in Frankfurt. So I think I don't treat modernism as a separate precious cow, holy cow. I say I was brought up on it. It's rather like, you know, do you throw away the church? I regard modernism almost as my sort of original childhood church, from which you then deviate but cling to certain moralities of it. The stylization is something else. I like Gothic and I like modern. but that doesn't mean I necessarily do them. I finished.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Great, great idea. I have a lot of questions, but and the panelists, everyone. So, do you have any opinion or question for Peter, or any discussion? Anna, do you have any comment? Henket, please.
Yes, I would like to comment and to greet Peter Cook. I will send you the last journal. Perhaps you don't have it. Please send me your address. Okay. And now I appreciate very much the Peter Cook talk, and it's absolutely, I agree in absolutely when he spoke about Ernest May and Frankfurt Siedlungs, and it's very fun because it's not so much talked about this fantastic thing, and in my very personal case, my jump to modern movement occurred when very young. I was studying in Lisbon, and I got a grant to go to Darmstadt for making the 4th year of architecture. And my first reaction was, oh, I don't want to go to Germany. I hate Germans. This is terrible, and so on. But of course, I went there, and I realized how, let's say, how limited I were. And I discovered not just Darmstadt with all these very fantastic colony of artists, very 19th century, with all of the experimentations of all these Hoffmann, Olbrich, Behrens, everything, but the Siedlungs were absolutely fascinating to discover these things in the 20s, and then to discover Netherlands and South and the Berlag plan in Amsterdam. So perhaps as chair of Docomomo, I'm not, very much strict or international style or absolutely Corbusian. In fact, what I really love is architecture and urbanism. And I really do, I have this strong conviction that this transformation since the 19th century started mainly in UK with the arts and crafts movement, which is absolute. I'm an art historian and architecture as well, and I always love very much to give courses of contemporary architecture with this rather shock thing, which is arts and crafts movement, Chicago after the fire with the skyscrapers, and as well all the transformations in the Western cities. So this is absolutely extraordinary to arrive then to Deutsche Werkbund, a kind of arts and crafts more realistic, I would say. So these in a way are the sources of this innovation concerning modernity, and I really do think that the great problem, in my opinion, is that all this quality of life that has to do with the public space, which is very important, as you talk, not just the balconies, but what we see from the balconies, our surrounding, the beautiful trees. I think we are all experiencing this thing. Myself, I'm discovering fantastic trees in my delicious neighborhood as well. The point is how to, after this great catastrophe, and I'm sure we are going to innovate and to change things after great disasters. This is the history, the sense of history. We are always able to make better. I'm an optimistic And for instance, my city, Lisbon, is the example after the great earthquake of the 18th century, the rebuild of the city with Enlightenment principles, fantastic, with incredible innovative ideas that were really beyond the people. The people never didn't understood how the plan was really concerned with future. They were really against it and so on. So what the great point is how to approach all this segregation between rich and poor in a sustainable frame, thinking about all the environment problems. This is the great challenge I really do think for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter Cook. Very good to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Henket, do you have something to say?
Yes, yes, please. I first want to thank Peter Cook because he reminded me of a lecture he gave in 1965 at my university in Delft. You came there with the whole Archigram group, and it was a very inspiring period of days. And now you inspire me again, because first of all, I liked your word improvisation, because what we have learned, at least as far as our country is concerned, in the Netherlands, where we had what we called an intelligent lockdown, as far as COVID-19 is concerned. The interesting thing is that we have to improvise, because we all don't know where the future is going. We don't know anything about this disease, and yet we have to make decisions. And we have based them, and that is very important in this day and age, on scientific information. And since we are now in a period where a lot of people, doubt what the truth is, what scientific truth is, it's very important that we've turned back to the cradle of science and, use that as the basic information of where we go. The other thing I like about Peter's talk, and I also liked about your presentation, Professor Suzuki, is that you both introduced the idea, which in the modern movement, in the beginning period, was not very important. That was very important, and that was functionalism. So the prosaic always, was the most important. Whereas what you do is you bring back the idea of poetry. And I always think architecture is a combination of the prosaic and the poetic. And it's interesting when you study the first, examples in my country, as far as the modern movement is concerned, and Anna referred to it, Sanatorium Zonnestraal, it's in architectural history, it's seen as a very important functionalistic building. But when you really look at it, it's amazingly poetic. There are all these little details, how you go from the inside to the outside, relation between in and out. It's all, a beautiful piece of poetry. And I think one of the important things, if we want to keep a humanistic environment for the future, we should combine the poetic with the prosaic. And you both in your drawings showed that that's very important, the nuance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So now going back to the panelists. Professor Yamana, do you have any comment for this discussion and or your new point of view? Can you tell me?
I have the many question and many things I want to say, but there's only the 30 minutes.
Yes.
So there's some audience.
Okay.
send many questions, so better to discuss open.
Okay.
Hi, could I say something? Hi,
Yeah.
this is Isangi from Los Angeles. Hello, Anna. Hello,
Okay.
Hubert. Hello, Peter.
Here.
It's early in the morning.
Oh,
Hi,
you
Yi.
are sleeping.
No.
Hi, Yi. Nice to see you.
No, I wanted to just kind
Amy,
of.
hello.
Hello.
I wanted to kind of reiterate
Hello,
how.
Anna.
Hello, Remy.
Sorry.
No, I just want to reiterate how one of the subjects that came up had to do with the being trapped by the language of modernism versus basically the larger ethos of modernism. And it's one of the things that I always get back to my students is that no matter how progressive and innovative our current contemporary architecture is, for me, the great thing about understanding the 20th century was that there was a sense of optimism that actually realized these buildings. And so these projects, which are complex integration of politics and economy and social values, for better or for worse, whether or not they're successful or failures, they're the fact that they were able to be created and to be tested and to actually be realized becomes this incredible legacy to, I would argue, to propel future innovation and to accelerate contemporary discourse rather than being trapped by it. So rather than, being kind of trapped by, oh, are we just studying a certain kind of a historical legacy? I would say it actually liberates us. As most of you know, I work with Tom Main over at Morpheus, and just a few days ago, we were just obsessing over Team 10, right? Just obsessing over Team 10 to see if some of the things were just failures at the moment, but how can we actually learn from it? And this is how I, as a contemporary practitioner, want to say that the value of Docomomo for me has been to accelerate our contemporary drive toward the values of modernism without the side discussion of being trapped by what we will call just respecting a certain kind of language. So in that regards, I very much value what Hubert and Anna spoke about in terms of like advancing what we're all trying to do here. And by the way, as a side note, here in Los Angeles, we're all joking as architects here in LA that the city actually looks like the actual perfect utopia that all the modernists planned it would be, with the right amount of people outside, the air being perfect, just the right amount of cars on the streets, and everybody kind of walking to where they are. So it's been a very interesting rebooting of the modernist ideals here in LA. So greetings from LA.
Okay, thank you very much. Interesting. Thank you.
Can I perhaps also take part of the discussion? Can you hear me?
It's more, I can hear you more loud, please.
I am Susanna Burtz. I am chair of the Specialist Committee of Interior Design of Docomomo International. And lately, actually, we have been working on a text, looking at the topic from the point of view of the interior. And I would like to stress the fact that we see interior not something between four walls, but interior is something that is close to the body. So it can be inside and it can also be outside. And we saw that actually this topic is for at least for the past 3 months, it was actually crucial because we couldn't get close to each other. So this is actually the space that had to be controlled on a very new way. And so we looked at topics from modernism, from light, air, and openness. So these three words, and also going back to the book of Paul Overy, which also starts actually with the Zonnestrahl discussion and hygiene. And we found that there are a lot of topics which can be connected perfectly to modernistic ideas and which were also thought of. But not only machine habitée or the existence minimum, which is of course crucial for the interior to understand how the domesticity would be understood, but also, and I was very happy to hear also about the poetics. So details, poetics, and also all other kind of things which next to functionality also bring the quality of life on a higher level and gives room for more humanity and also other aspects of life which are not directly related to functionalism. So I was also asking if it was possible to put somehow this text that we have prepared to participate on the debate for the topic of the postponed Tokyo Congress. We are almost ready, so we actually it is about 500 words or something like that. So we make the link with modernistic topics and topics which are now very present, related to the interior topics. Because we all the time are talking about urbanism and architecture, and we think that as most of us had to go in shelter, the topic of the interior very specifically, and so as I said, the space close to our body is actually very, very important, and very often loses its meaning when we think about the bigger picture, which is of course important, and it ends up in the bigger picture in urbanism and these kind of things. But perhaps it is interesting to look at closer, the space is closer to our body, and how we can define it, and how also we can redefine it, because it's the public and the private, which were very nicely separated, is now not separated anymore. We are working from our homes, so it's private becomes public, and all these kind of things. So everybody understands, I think, what I'm talking about. So these kind of topics we would like to address actually through our specialist committee on interior design.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will tell you, all of you. Yeah. So now we had opinion, and so these topics, this argument would continue to the conference in Tokyo next year. So now we are seeking for the point of discussion, theme for discussion. And now your opinion is very it's a very suggestive, and we need to think about we need to discuss about such kind of spatial issue, including interior space relating with our physical body. And now we had a question and the opinion from by the group chat, and Jonas Widodo said modernism is like a frame where life thrives in between that frame, so nothing much is changing due to COVID-19. And I want to tell about this opinion because yes, COVID-19 might not change anything, but everything has changed. I think everything has changed already, and COVID-19 told us. COVID-19 showed it. So you know, we have lost community already 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And we have idea of narrow meaning modernism. We have already lost. We have changed, but nobody said it. And COVID-19 told us it has changed. That is my point. COVID-19, okay, so maybe a medical doctor will find a vaccine, and we will get out of our room again. Maybe, and someday another virus would come again. But it's a medical issue. My opinion is architecture has changed already. So, for example, the neighborhood unit, we have lost already 50 years ago. Because, for example, Japan, the community neighborhood unit must have a center as elementary school, but we have no young kids so much in Japan. So elementary school cannot be the center of the community. We have known already. We have changed, but we pretended. We have pretended to not to know such kind of change. But COVID-19 taught us clearly. So that is my point. So I think we need to re-evaluate again and the modernism, the idea and the philosophy and motivation of modern movement. It's my opinion. That is why I came up with the idea we would have a discussion here now.
Is it possible to hear from the Widodo, Professor Widodo?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just a few words, because I'm following this from the very beginning. I always think from all these discussions is just to simplify matter. I like to simplify matter. I always view modernism and modernity actually is like a frame, like a grid. So everything can be growing in between, different colors, different cultures, politics, whatever. But modernism, modern movement, provide us with a very clear, rational, and functional grid. And that makes modernity and modern architecture actually very resilient to change. And I think the next discussion from even Yamana and Sin, you're talking about the importance of life, the importance of life in between, and the issue of ethics and social justice, which already at the very beginning of the discourse of modernism. Modernism starts from social justice, improvement of living conditions, about housing for the mass, and so on. So now we have this social agenda actually is very well maintained in the concept of modernism. So it's no, if we talk about modern heritage, it's actually a very, very oxymoron terminology. It's still relevant. It's not past. It's not past of belong to the past, but it's still continuing to provide service to humanity. And of course, when Sins mentions about the Muramatsu-san mentioned about the climate change, environmental change, and so on, and all these problems. Yeah, of course, now we are talking about the, well, United Nations talk about 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and it's fit very much into even the so-called the agenda of modernism. So that's why when I type those things, that it's like a frame, so nothing has changed. But yes, like Suzuki-san said, that everything has been changed already. But that is the nature of human being and culture is changed. It's not frozen. So to answer the question whether modern architecture is frozen, the answer is no, definitely it's not. So the so-called new normal actually is something abnormal, if we think. But that abnormality is become a normal thing for the future. And that is perfectly fit into the so-called the frame, and because it's not like a box. which is very different from the classical architecture of the past who designed something like a box. But our way of thinking about modernism, the way we design, we look things, is really is about the framework. And that makes modern architecture, modernism relevant for present and the future.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
May I?
Anna, yes.
Oh, I think we are quite about to finish in 10 minutes, and I would like to say that we are considering, I believe we have space for that, to have at least one session in our conference, let's hope next year in Tokyo, devoted to this discussion on the COVID-19, isn't it? I think it's important to tell everybody that Tokyo organization is thinking about opening a session on this matter, isn't it?
Of course,
Yamana.
of course.
And this is, I think it's very important to, in 1 year, to make a kind of a reset, an updating of this question, and perhaps it's very good that you are taping this series of discussions, and perhaps we could do something around this. I'm happy to say so. Thank you.
For the next years, we continue to discuss with this platform, and then to develop the idea, and then we open the paper around August, and then everybody from the world until maybe the October, and then we discuss again at the last the next year.
Yes, yeah, we will do. It's very important. Yeah.
And also the Peter Cook, Mr. Peter Cook, will join us the next year, please.
Yes, I think we must invite him
yeah.
with some drawings, but we must bring drawings.
Yeah.
Yes,
No problem.
Because we must put archigram with metabolists. You are a kind of twins, so it's time to update as well, 60 years after all this innovation you brought to the world.
I hope next year the capsule tower of the Kisho Kurokawa stay there. We don't know.
Oh, yes, we are fighting for years. It will stay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anyone have a comment? Peter, hey, please.
Yeah, just a couple of observations from the last week or two here. Some things happen plus, and some things happen questionably. One of you said that was it in Los Angeles, that just the right number of cars. Actually, the effect in London is that there are more cars on the road than ever. There have been traffic jams because anybody who has a car doesn't trust the public transport and wants to go to somewhere that's where they get a nice view from the top of the hill or whatever it is, and it's chock-a-block. It's chock-a with cars. The other thing is that I've noticed in our residential neighborhood that political notices since the black atrocities, political notices have appeared on trees alongside notices about lost cats. And the parks, we have a lot of parks, but they're absolutely full of people. They're almost like beaches. Yal and I tried to go to where we thought was a fairly obscure park. So we took the car to this obscure park. It was absolutely, the people, you know, sort of 6 meters apart. This is not in a popular park. This is in one that's sort of known if you know it. The movement towards abolishing the car, or at least reducing the use of car, strangely enough, that is probably set back another 10 years. I mean, people don't trust the public system if they have any chance to avoid it. but it has brought a reuse of the parks, because we were reaching a situation before that where parks were somewhere where you went and got mugged or went only on a very, very special day. Now they have rediscovered their 100-year-old tradition. Whether that will stay, and the political notices on the trees, because it's no good having a political notice 3 kilometers away. You stick it on the local tree, so that again, to remake my earlier point, the immediate locality takes on new nuances. Now, I will be intrigued to see how just those 3 phenomena can or do not, or are resisted when, if and when things get back to normal. I think it's a much more complex effect, and it's like a drip feed. It will have long range effects, not only on typologies, and I think architectural typologies get very easily frozen and stay for 50, 100 years before they're jerked out of their self-satisfiedness. So I think it's a very intriguing, in the abstract, it's an intriguing set of forces at work.
May I just think the reason I choose this slide with the bicycles way in Lisbon, it's because our mayor is now starting with lots of works, and in fact the streets for cars are getting so narrow, because in fact the idea is to use this shift time, you know, to avoid cars. And it's
They do that here. They do that
of
here
course,
also.
this is a little city, Lisbon. I know it's a little city.
People come out with the cars. They say, to hell with that. If we have a car.
No. But look, Peter, we never thought in Lisbon 20 years ago that it was possible to have a bicycle and to travel with bicycle. Never, because we always said, oh, it's, you know, coming down and up. And now it's incredible, the quantity we are following the Netherlands people now. So this is time to reset and to take the chance quick, but must be speedy.
You see, in New York, the amount of bicycles, the selling of bicycles has increased with 65%.
Mm-hmm.
That gives hope.
Yeah.
We must change, we must change, we must shift.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
What about Tokyo?
Tokyo,
Stay at home.
I stay at home and then I walk around my area and I go to the Shibuya by foot. So that is very agreeable.
2
What
hours
about
walk.
cycling, Yamana?
Yeah.
Yamana, what about cycling?
Cycling also. So that is many now, and so many that it comes to be the dangerous. The center of the Tokyo in the morning.
Yeah.
So
it's a rainy season now, so it's
so it's good for your health. So yeah, we need to change a lot of style. We need to rethink about the lifestyle, including traffic. Traffic would be very important, and infrastructure would be very important, I think. So now it's time to Anna must.
Can I propose?
Yes, please.
Is it okay? So I prefer to continue to discuss that kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So next subject we have to choose. In maybe we organize in 1 month or in 2 months. So what is the subject for the next one? That now you say the transport. That is one of the interesting things.
Yeah. Transportation and infrastructure, it's a very, very important because it's
I'm sorry, circulation.
Circulation.
Mm-hmm. Move city. Walking city.
Mobile city. Mobile city. And we should discuss archigram and metabolism.
That is good thing.
With circulation.
And circulation also in interior, circulation in hospitals and homes. So circulation is also a very important topic for interior.
Right.
Not only from the urbanism, but also for the interior, also for hospitals. Now
yes, you must read the journal. We talk about this in hospitals.
So
we have like a deep study on that, on hospitals.
So please send a message to the Docomomo 2020, who wants to the presentation the next time, the subject, and then we communicate. We continue to communicate.
Okay.
Yes.
For the chair, the Suzuki. It's okay.
Okay, good. And so we missed Professor Muramatsu.
Yes.
Where is seeing Muramatsu? He turned it into frog again.
Yes, I'm listening.
It's frogging.
Yeah, a little bit because I'm not the architect, so I cannot follow the architect's saying. For example, 400 years ago, we are in a Edo period. We are very slow life, and maybe I enjoy before the modern movement period. So,
and of course,
everybody here is very modernist. That's why I'm a little bit embarrassed. So that's why I'm
okay. I got it.
Quiet.
Yeah. Now
this is a good issue for discussion. Slow life. This is a good issue for discussion.
Everybody speak very fast, not slow.
Modernist.
Very modernism speaking and discussion.
Okay, I got it. So now it's time to end this time. So we prepare the next discussion in a month or so in the Tokyo team, and we will announce. And so as Yamana said, so if you have any opinion or join our discussion, please send a message or email for Docomomo Tokyo office, and we will regard it. So thank you very much, panelists, all guests for discussion. It's a very great time, and so as usual, we have no conclusion, but we will find a very good point for discussion for the next urbanism and next architecture and next age, I believe. So we will continue to discuss again and again. And yes, so we will have various different opinion, but it's okay. It's a discussion. It's for the next age. So no easy conclusion. I don't care. So thank you very much, everyone. So see you next time. Thank you, Peter, so much. Peter, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.